Vietnam today, a land of beauty and busy activity. A contrast to 1968 when the Vietnam War was at its height for the United States. The war raged from the Mekong Delta in the south to military installations in North Vietnam, then down the border with Laos and Cambodia, which became known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail to all Americans. The Ho Chi Minh Trail entered the old South Vietnam at many places along its border with Laos. One of the prime entry points was just south of the former Marine combat base at Khe Sanh. Today, Khe Sanh is made into a coffee plantation, with the museum showing communist propaganda pictures of the battle and telling of the victory by the so-called liberation forces of the North. As we travel along the former DMZ and Highway 9 from Khe Sanh, we go by a new bridge that represents the major entry point of the Ho Chi Minh Trail into old South Vietnam. Our guide tells us that a new north-south road is being built along the old trail route to relieve the traffic problems on Highway 1. Highway 1 is presently the north-south route between Hanoi in the north and Saigon in the south. Saigon was renamed to Ho Chi Minh City when the Communists took over in 1975. As we make our way along Highway 9 toward Dong Ha and on the way, we pass many old combat bases that used to fill the nightly news back in the 1960s. Long Vey Special Forces Camp, Hill 881, Hill 881 South, Cap Vandergrift, Camp Carroll, Rockpile, Cam Low. A new road leads to Con Thien. Names all but forgotten except to those who were there and to the parents and wives and family of those who lost loved ones in this forgotten corner of the world. The names will be forgotten as the parents, wives, and family go to their graves, but not forgotten to our Heavenly Father, who knows each fallen soul who ever lived on the face of the earth. As we continue our journey south on Highway 1 to Way, we see busy activity everywhere. New bridges being built, new asphalt roads being laid by modern construction equipment. We see motorbikes everywhere carrying people, lots of people, and produce and livestock to market. The familiar sampans plying the water highways with their heavy loads. Markets and stores are full of food and imported goods, much different than the war years. In the year 2000, over 400,000 motorbikes were either made or imported into Vietnam. In the world's way of success, everything is on a steady climb to respectability in the Pacific Rim. As we arrive in Hue, we see that nothing much remains in Hue of the battle that raged here for 25 days after Tet in 1968. Unknown to the American generals that 3 North Vietnamese Army combat divisions had infiltrated Hue during the Chinese New Year celebration. The ensuing battle was won at terrible cost of Marine lives in retaking the city and the U.S. Army blocking units west of town. The NVA lost over 5,000 confirmed soldiers, with an equal number of civilians losing their lives. Historians say this battle stopped the troop buildup at 543,000 U.S. troops in the war, then started the steady withdrawals to finally the last combat troops leaving in 1972. In the world's view, time heals. But does it? Today in Vietnam, the country is abuzz with activity. The rice fields have a bountiful harvest again. Banana plants and coconut palms are everywhere. White and yellow corn have been introduced in the years since the war to the lowlands. Some former Army and Marine bases are once again rice paddies and farm fields. The former Marine air bases at Phu Bai and Chu Lai can still be seen along Highway 1. The marble artisans of Marble Mountain are busy with tourists from all over the world buying their craft, while the Marble Mountain helicopter base looks unused with weeds around it. China Beach has returned to the pine tree forest it once was before the war started. Factories are being constructed to utilize hard-working, cheap labor pool in Vietnam. But is this what life is all about in this communist country? Does the business success reflect the souls of the Vietnamese people's inner search for peace? In this communist country, 7-day work weeks are the norm since 1975. Since the war ended, Seventh-day Adventist churches have been destroyed, closed, and the handful left around Saigon have been restricted in their growth and activities. In the mid-1990s, Pastor Isaiah Young, a Vietnamese pastor ministering in Southern California, started a work for his people called Peace and Happiness. It started sending sermons on tapes into Vietnam. Adventist World Radio heard of his work and started to broadcast his sermon from the powerful shortwave station in Guam. As more time became available, Adventist World Radio broadcast a half-hour program 3 times a day, plus a regular worship service with hymn singing on Sabbath morning and rebroadcasted again on Sunday. This was something new to the Vietnamese listeners: music and the spoken word. As the letters started to pour in from this communist country, where a postage stamp to the U.S. cost over $1, that's over a day's wages to most Vietnamese, Pastor Isaiah and his staff realized they were touching the very heart and soul of Vietnam from the Chinese border to the Mekong Delta. Efforts were put in place to print God's truth in Vietnam underground. God has a people, yes, even in a forgotten country like Vietnam, but not forgotten to God, who has his people's names etched on his hands. The impact of the message going over Adventist World Radio was not fully realized until over 13,000 souls in 1 month in the year 2000 decided to take their stand for the Sabbath and the remnant message of the 3 angels of Revelation 14. I'm Stephen Dickey of Strawberry Meadow Association. We are a supporting ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and have been a member of ASI since 1985. I was contacted over 3 years ago to see how we could assist with this new underground publishing work started by the great demand of the new believers for anything printed, including the Bible. In 1998, I accompanied Pastor Isaiah on his first trip to his home country since he escaped in 1975. I witnessed the first baptismal class and baptism known to the outside world held in Vietnam since the communists took control. I found the secret publishing plan that was in place to be workable and working, but the few $1,000s coming from here and there has not been adequate to keep a continuous flow of truth to these new believers. From the Chinese border area, where there are over 150 home churches, to the Central Highlands, where whole villages are now Sabbath keepers, to the Mekong Delta. God's people in Vietnam are waiting for the printed page. This country elicits memories of all kinds from the baby boomer generation, my academy roommate, vocational school classmate, my friend that went in the Marines when I did, my wife's next-door neighbor. Many of my Marine acquaintances gave the ultimate sacrifice, their lives. When I flew out of Da Nang after 27 months in country, for the last time in 1970, I said, I'm never coming back here again. But after Jesus found me, I knew everyone in this world has a right to a Bible that presents this end-time message, and I told God he could do with me as he so chose. Let's take a look at one of these home churches that meets secretly in this land of religious oppression. This room has been set aside for use only as a church in this small home. During this midweek service, hymns are sung from songbooks printed underground in Vietnam. The shortages of Bibles is acute. Plans are in place to print Bibles just as we have printed our other books. We estimate between 500 to well over 1,000 home churches exist in this country. The explosion of new Seventh-day Adventist members that are coming into the Third Angel's message are being forced underground, and all church activity has to be done in secret. As more letters pour into Peace and Happiness offices in the United States, our runners in Vietnam are just scratching the surface and making contacts and delivering tracts and literature and books all over Vietnam. Here is one of God's faithful underground workers.
It
is officially that religion is free, but the government does not allow people to go out and preach. As a result, it is very difficult for us to distribute religious book, especially when the origin of Peace and Happiness book is from America. That's why the distribution of Peace and Happiness is very dangerous and it is not allowed by the government. That's the reason why we have to be very careful and we have to make plans when we want to move the books and bring the books to the end listener.
As our video crew traveled Vietnam, we saw many checkpoints set up and were stopping all the Vietnamese. But we were blessed. We as Americans were able to pass on. Is this what you think of when you hear the name Vietnam? Fellow Vietnam veteran and Seventh-day Adventist Church members, we have an opportunity to help erase those bad memories of Vietnam by the printed pages of the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy, which is so needed to keep God's people growing in Vietnam. Isn't over 25 years of atheism enough for these sin-sick souls? A whole generation has grown up without ever having the opportunity of reading and hearing this end-time gospel. The Creator God has given us this window of opportunity. Let's step in before it's too late. Funds are needed now, while the spiritual iron is hot. What will you do today to help? Will this need of the Vietnamese people's inner soul, reaching for God's truth, be filled by you today? Don't let this opportunity pass you by. If not today, when?